Welcome to Chess Match. Learn chess with the Rochester Chess Center. In our match today, we have two brothers, Aidan and Leo Shortino. Okay, would you guys shake hands, please? And then Aidan, you may start by pushing the button. Don't forget your button. Okay, so far good moves here. Center pawns. Moving pieces out towards the middle of the board. Push a button. And you'll notice both players brought out a knight first before bringing out a bishop. Usually you know where the knight's going, so you bring out at least one knight first. Okay, Leo has played a check to make sure that Aidan cannot castle, but he gave up a bishop to do that. Let's see if it's worthwhile. Okay, black actually has more pieces developed than white does at this point, which is pretty good for somebody who's playing defense. Okay, Leo has been pushing the pieces all around the board, and finally he should get some fruits from his labor by playing a fork. This pawn on e5 is chasing the knight on d6 and the knight on f6. Leo can save one, but he will have a tough time saving both. Or Aidan can save one. Let's see how he tries to do that. Push button. Okay, so Leo has now recaptured his piece. Material is now even again, and that black king looks like he's very brave. But Aidan can't be happy with even material. He wants to give something up to try and play offense. You might have heard earlier, this is called having the initiative. You're the one who's pushing the pace. You're in check. That was a very good move. The queen from the center of the board looked in all directions. Oh, but he didn't capture the bishop with the queen. Now the bishop can save itself. Okay, now we had heard earlier that the person that's ahead in material wants to trade off pieces. So that's one reason Aidan wanted to trade. But there's another reason. If you're playing defense or you're being attacked, you also want to trade and make sure the other person doesn't have as many pieces to get checkmate. Okay, Leo. Well, Aiden said you didn't capture my bishop before, so now I will try to move it away. But it didn't move to safety. Oh, it was just a case of a hanging piece. But white still has an advantage in development right now. He can get his other rook into the game fast. Okay, now a lot of players do this. They notice their piece is being attacked, and so they'll try to move it away quickly. Often, the best way to save it is to capture this knight. The way that white can capture the knight is to play a check, and then whatever black does, they'll just capture the knight and save the rook. Now, you had a choice of capturing the queen or the pawn. You chose a pawn. Oh. But it's not time to panic yet. You're still ahead in material for black, as long as you can live through it. Now let's adjust this piece. Okay. The idea when somebody gives away material at the beginning for an attack, if they survive the attack, they should win. But if they don't survive the attack, they didn't win. Oh, guys, go slower here. The queen and the rook were looking at each other. One of them should have captured the other one. It's usually a good idea, too, to trade off this bishop for that rook. We'd call that winning the exchange. So now that white king is still left all alone in the middle of the board, and black might get to attack while having the extra rook. Things are getting very tough for white right now. Can't go there, the queen. This black queen owns the d file, but you're still in check on the e file. And now he says, all my pieces are going to come after the king. It's time to be afraid. Check. All right, the queen's still trying to do things over here and cause confusion. But black just has to figure out how to go after the king. Two good moves there. Okay. At this point, there were two good ideas here. One of which is playing this, where the pawn could have taken the rook and played a check. The other one I'm not going to mention yet. We'll talk about that possibly later. Okay, Aiden, it's your move. Or not Aiden, I'm sorry. It's Leo's move. You just moved your king here. Okay, Leo did stop the other good move. The other good move back here would have been playing the rook check to let this queen be ready to capture this one. So by Leo doing this, he said, I'm going to stop that. Very nice. And you're up. Now both players are getting very low on time, and we're in what we call time pressure. Black still has that rook, but now white's got a couple pawns for it. And this queen that doesn't want to stop playing checks. Oh, finally we get that in. Check, check. Check from the rook. Black plays a check first. Or white played a check, rather.
I was out of time.
Oh, okay. Now you don't have to actually call it when you're out of time. You make your opponent call it. Okay. In fact, I'm not allowed to call it in tournament chess. I have to have one of you guys call it. But yeah, so you survived that long enough by playing all those checks that you ran them out of time. Guys, very nice game. Shake hands. The tip of the day for this game would be what we call a discovered attack. You'll notice the two queens are on the same diagonal. All black has to do is find a way to move this rook out of the way, and the black queen can take the white queen. So the black rook moves, makes a check, and then the black queen is able to capture the white queen. Discovered attack. Chess Match is sponsored by the Rochester Chess Center, which has been serving the Rochester chess community for over 24 years.
Dave Petty versus Connor Wagner, CCCR match 10-2-2013.
Hey everyone, this is David Petty, the handsome devil on the left in the black shirt, and I'll be commenting on my game here against Connor. Now, I am Connor's teacher. I actually taught him some classes, and I know how good he is. So even though I'm the stronger player, I was quite nervous going into this game. Here we go, and we're off.
It's gonna be a good game. Yeah, I'm playing the first seed. I'm gonna attempt to play a really drawish opening, hoping I can get a draw. I'm obviously gonna go for a win, but he's a good opponent, so it should be a good game. Yeah, I hear he has his opening is his worst part of the game, so I'm gonna hope to get a strong advantage there and hopefully be able to pull out a win.
My name is David Petty. I'm one of the instructors here at the Rochester Chess Center.
And you're going to be playing at board 1 today, correct?
That's right, and what that means is that I'm the highest rated player in the tournament, although not by much. And I'm playing a very strong young up-and-comer. In fact, I've taught him over the last year a few times in summer camp. He's one of the very strongest kids in Rochester, and I'm actually a little bit nervous. Yeah, well, there's a saying, with youngsters to the end game, which means that young players tend to be really good at tactics, which is like forcing moves, lots of variations, and calculating, but they tend to be very bad at the end game. So one option when you're playing a younger person is to try to bring the game to an end game, and then you can try to win with your technique in the end game. But I'm not going to do that this game. I'm playing an exciting middle game, which is exactly where younger players are good. At least that's the plan. We'll see if he does what I think he's going to do. So Connor has chosen the English opening, which is that move c4 for white, and I chose an unusual reply with pawn to g6 over on the side of the board. And you're going to see why and what I'm doing in just a couple of moves. The idea for black here is our pawns aren't going to be in contact with each other. He's going to be pushing his pawns on the queen side of the board over where the queens are, and I'm going to be pushing my pawns on the king side, and we're both going to be grabbing space on different halves of the board. So here, we're just going to develop our pieces. Connor brings out his knight, and now I'm going to bring out my bishop to g7. When in doubt in chess, if you're not sure what to do and you're in the opening, you just want to bring out a new piece. So Connor thinks for a few seconds and then voila, he brings out his knight. He knows his knight belongs there, moving towards the center of the board, so why not just play it there? And even though I had prepared exactly what I was going to do against him, you see that I'm still taking my time on every move. And this move, e5, might have taken him a little bit by surprise. It looks a little bit weird. It's blocking in my bishop that I just developed. And what's going on? Well, you'll see in a couple moves how I set up my pawns together. So the move d3 by Connor there, it lets out his bishop, and it also guards the e4 square in case I was going to try to push my pawn to e4 at some point and attack his knight. He's just preventing that from happening. Now he's guarding that e4 square twice. So now I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to push my pawn to d6. It's going to let out my bishop. It's also going to cement my control of e5. I'm going to guard that pawn. And it's part of the pawn structure that I'm setting up. Here I'm stroking my beard with my thumb as I ponder, but pretty much I know what I'm going to do. And here what I'm thinking about is I know the setup that I want, but I'm just trying to double check the move order, which means I know all the moves I want to play, but it matters what order I play them in. So I'm making sure the best order. If I play the moves in the wrong order, it might give him more opportunities. And here I'm thinking for quite a while, if I recall, because what I want to play is I want to push my pawn to f5. But I'm worried that if I do that, he'll play bishop to g5, attacking my queen, and my pieces won't really be in the right position. So first, I end up bringing my knight out to c6 to make it less likely that he'll play bishop to g5. So Connor thinks for a while, but eventually he plays the obvious move, which is just developing his bishop, making sure I didn't have any threats. And now white is ready to castle. And here I make the move that is part of my whole plan, my plan since before the first move of the game. This is something that I prepared before the game started, and that is going to be the move pawn to f5, which is normally a move you don't really make in chess. You don't move your f pawn very often because it weakens your king. But what I'll be doing is trying to create an avalanche of pawns on the king side to attack his king where I expect he will be castling. Here I'm just double checking that nothing bad is going to happen to me if I make the weakening move. And there I go. Pawn to f5. I finally convinced myself to do it. It was my plan all along, but I had to make sure that it was safe. So after playing this move, next I'm going to develop my knight to f6. I didn't want to do that first because then it would block my pawn in. So first the pawn comes forward, then my knight will come out, and then I will castle with this sort of strange pawn structure. And you'll see how black's pawns are kind of pushing forward on the king side, and soon white's pawns are going to be pushing forward on the queen side. So Connor castles his king, and if I'd been sitting there when he did this, a big smile would have appeared on my face, because it's black's plan to push his pawns on the king side, where he's already pushed them quite a bit, and try to open lines and attack the white king. But if the white king never goes there, then that plan won't work. Of course, the white king didn't have a better place to castle, but still, this would make black happy. It's fitting into his plan. So now we fast forward a little bit, and you see that I brought out my knight and I castled, and meanwhile Connor has made this mysterious rook move. Not that mysterious anymore because he's pushing his pawn. He slid his rook over to b1, and he's using the rook to shove that pawn forward and expand on the queen side, and that pawn isn't going to stop there. It's going to keep coming and kick my knight from c6. And you see, like I said from the beginning, the strategy of both sides is to be expanding with their pawns on different sides of the board. And that's why I played my next move, a mysterious little pawn move. Pawn to h6. And the reason is that's going to support my g-pawn to move forward. I'm just slowly oozing forward with my pawns. And so Connor will continue to expand on the queen side, and I will continue to expand on the king side. Now, why is it important to expand on different sides of the board? What's the point of shoving all your pawns up? Well, when you do that, you get something called space. Pawns are the least valuable piece, so big guys like knights and bishops and rooks don't want to trade for just a little pawn. So when Connor attacks my knight with his pawn in just a minute, I'm going to run away because I don't want to trade my valuable, expensive knight for just a little pawn. So the pawn avalanche in the front pushes your opponent's pieces back, and it also opens up space for your pieces behind the pawns. So when you have more space on one side of the board, you want to play on that side of the board. You can bring more of your pieces over there to create a favorable fight because you will have more guys in the area than them. So he's trying to do that on the queen side, and I'm going to try to do that on the king side where his king lives, meaning I'm going to try to checkmate him. And he advances his pawn, and I retreat my knight. Now notice though, even when my knight is retreating, it's moving toward the king side, which in the long run is not bad for me at all, because as I gain more space on the king side to attack his king, I want to bring my pieces over there. And here, Connor thinks for a while and then does something called a prophylactic move. Prophylaxis is when you stop something before it happens. So he's going to be a little bit nervous, a little bit scared of my pawns advancing on the king side, and he's going to try to stop it by preventing my next pawn move. My next pawn move is g5, so he's going to control the g5 square with one of his pawns. So here he goes. He moves the h pawn to h4, and that's preventing me from playing g5. Now in the long run, making pawn moves in front of your king can weaken your king, which I'm doing as well by pushing all the pawns in front of my king. So it's not an easy decision, but he decides that it's better to slow me down or he's going to get in trouble. Now here I ended up thinking for a very long time, and the reason is it's a critical position. There's lots of interesting options for me, and what I ended up deciding to do is move my knight from f6 to h5 to the edge of the board. The reason is I'm trying to play pawn to f4, so the knight from h5 attacks the f4 square. It also attacks the g3 square. It also opens up my bishop on g7 on the long diagonal and creates all sorts of tactics. So let's zoom ahead to that. And here I was once again considering lots of different choices. I'm considering pushing my pawn to g5 and advancing my pawns. I'm considering pushing my pawn to e4, which is what I ended up doing in the game. I'm also considering moving my queen closer to the king side to be prepared to bring her over there. So eventually, one thing that's sort of interesting in chess is that lots of times, like in this position, you've got lots of different options and you just can't decide which is the best. I mean, you have to make your best guess, but you really can't know. And that's very frustrating sometimes to never be 100% sure, but that's also what makes chess interesting. And finally, I play it, pawn to e4, and you'll notice that this opens up an attack from my bishop on g7. It's now attacking his knight on c3. That knight is undefended, which means he has to defend his knight on c3 instead of taking my pawn on e4. It looks like my pawn on e4 is going to get captured, but he has no time for that because his knight on c3 is more important. So Connor chooses to defend his knight with his queen, which also brings his queen into the game. A good decision.
Today's benefit is that chess helps improve your memory. A lot of players memorize the first several moves they'd like to play, but memory is also important in that if you make a mistake and lose a game, you memorize something for the next game. So you can use that tool, or what we call a tactic, and use it in the next game. For instance, if one player plays a fork against you, that is one piece of text too, you'll learn a new trick and you can use that in a later game.
Before you just run with your king, see if you can capture the checking piece.
My name is David Phelps.
And Dave, you had a really close game also. didn't you?
Yes, yes.
How did the game go? Did your strategy work that you started off with? Did you have to change?
I had a free pawn early on in the game, and I didn't take it, and then I paid for it. He actually defended it, and when I look back at it now, I wish I would have taken it, and I would have been up a pawn, but I think I would have better counterplay after that. But I had such a phenomenal idea I wanted to do. I was going to pin his queen to his king, and his knight was never going to be able to move, but that darn pawn, it actually helped him. Having it there, so I ran into that problem, and then it turned into a very long game. It didn't help that the game next to me was intense as well. Guy sacks a pawn or a piece for 3 pawns, and it's just craziness there.
You're watching the game next to you?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, they're going to be my opponents eventually, so
Yeah.
if you're the winner, you're going to be playing them soon.
So does that make you tense to watch the game next to you? If it had been an easy game,
I wouldn't have paid attention as much, but I would have. I enjoyed it. I mean, it was fun to watch. When you see sacking and craziness, it's fun to watch.
You
So.
came down to time behind too, didn't you?
Yes, I had 7 seconds, and he was down to 1 second, and it was a rook versus a rook and a knight. And about 5 years ago, I watched Isai Goliak, and he did the same similar technique, and I just remembered it. And if I didn't remember that technique, it would have been a draw somewhere.
Really?
But because I remembered somewhat of what to do, get your knight next to your king, and then the rook's going to play checkmate in one of these 2 areas. Because I remembered that, I was able to beat him, or at least put pressure on him so his clock would go down to 0. So just because of that one technique and that one thing I spotted, I was able to do that. So.
Wow. So you pulled that strategy out at the last minute.
Yeah. I wasn't expecting.
You have to be up here first.
Yes, you have to see it, and you have to kind of memorize it. Just a little technique. That's all it took. So.
Awesome. Well, congratulations on the win.
Thank you. Thank
Hard
you.
fought, pulled out from behind win.
Yes.
Awesome. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
That was good. That's okay.
Did you hear that? Oh, yeah, I was
No, I
like,
didn't hear that.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
time.